And in this particular session, we are going to talk about the 2024 paper. And from the 2024 paper, we are going to pick up some questions that are there. And we are going to see how to attempt them. Now, this is basically a continuation of the last two sessions that we had, because if you remember, from the very first session itself, we have been specifically emphasizing on the very first type of question that is asked, which is quotation based questions. In the last class, we did discuss two of these questions and we tried to understand how we are going to attempt them. Okay. So today is the last session or the last class related to the quotation based questions. So the next session that would be there, that next session we will move on to the applied ethics part and the questions that comes from the applied ethics. What are the types of questions? How are we supposed to address them? And so on. Okay, we are going to discuss that part. Clear? So in the last session, we did talk about, what exactly are the quotation based questions and how to attempt them. Today, what we are going to do is I'm going to elaborate upon it. That means I'm going to look at the questions that have been asked in the 2024 paper, and we are going to see how to attempt those questions. And if you have practiced in the last week, if you have you have practiced a number of questions, so there may be a possibility that you may be facing some problems related to how you are writing those or how you are attempting those. So in that case, if you are facing some problems, some of those would be resolved in the discussion that we are having, or for that matter, you can even go ahead and ask. If you are facing such problems, what problems you are facing, you can even ask that to clarify your doubts. Okay, so let us come to the quotations that have been asked in the last year, and let us start with the very first question. Okay, so what was the very first quotation that has been asked? Let us see that. See, the first question has been asked. It is a statement of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. The statement is, faith is of no avail. Faith is of no avail in the absence of strength. In the absence of strength, faith and strength both are essential to accomplish any great work. Are essential to accomplish any great work. Okay, this is the statement that has been asked by this was the statement that was asked. This is a statement given by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. Okay, now looking at the statement, first of all, how should we attempt such questions? Again, I have talked about it. I'm repeating this because some of you may still be facing some problems related to how to attempt such questions. Okay, you may still be facing such problems. So that you are absolutely clear related to how to attempt statement based questions, the introduction of your answer should always be about the meaning. What it should always be? It should always be about what exactly is the meaning of this particular statement. Clear? So, introduction is what? Introduction is about a correlation between faith as well as strength. A correlation between faith and strength. A correlation between faith and strength. Okay? A correlation between the two. Now, remember, when we say faith and strength, how are they correlated? They are correlated because without strength to pursue your faith, a simple having faith on any specific issue is of no use. If you just have faith, but you do not necessarily have the strength to pursue what faith you have, that faith is of no use. Okay? So, the first aspect of this, the very first aspect of it is what? The very first aspect of it is where you express the correlation between the two, where you write, what does faith give us? What does faith give us? Faith gives us vision. It gives us purpose. It gives us hope. Okay? So what does faith give us? Faith is responsible for giving us a vision as to, how I should do what, how I should, pursue whatever I think is important for me. Okay, that vision, what is important and how I should pursue them. So that is what faith gives. It gives us vision. It gives us hope. It gives us what? It gives us hope. And along with it, it gives us purpose, a purpose of life. Okay, a purpose of life. And when we say strength, what is the importance of strength? And what does strength do? So strength is what gives us competence and courage. Okay, what is strength? Strength gives us courage. Strength gives us competence. Now, look at the correlation between the two. Can our hope or vision, or for that matter, purpose, can this be achieved without the courage to pursue them? Without the courage to, without the courage to try to achieve them? No, it cannot. In fact, competence or the willingness to develop competence to achieve what I hope for or what I want to achieve, the purpose that I have, it comes from what? It comes from courage. What does it come from? It comes from courage. Okay. So this correlation in a way is the meaning of what this statement is, and that is what you have to write in the introduction part itself. Okay, this is what you have to write, where this is what you have to write in the introduction part. In fact, if some of you are students of old batch and you have actually read this, you will find that there is a very important theorist, and his perspective is very overlapping with what has been said. No, what has been, this statement is being said by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. And that individual is Plato. And what does Plato say? Plato says that there are three parts of an individual's self. Okay, what are those three parts? Plato says there are three parts of an individual self. What are those? First is what he calls as the appetite or the appetitive part of the self, which he calls passion. So our passion is what? Our passion is the appetitive part of ourself. है ना? What do we want to achieve? हमें क्या चाहिए? What we want to achieve? Appetite. है ना? Appetite is generally something that we relate to food. But in this case, we are talking about an individual's self. So, appetite or the passion is something which you can correlate to what? You can correlate this to vision, to hope, to purpose. That's the appetite. And then you have two other elements. The second element is what is called as will or the executive element. Executive element. And then you have then you have the third element. The third element is about what? The third element is about reason. Okay, so an individual having reason. Okay, so reason, appetite, passion, or will. Now, if you look at this particular statement given by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel is emphasizing on two things here. He is emphasizing on the fact that passion, which gives us purpose, which gives us purpose, that is there, is nothing until we have the will to pursue what we aspire or what we are passionate about. Okay, so will or the executive element is what? This is what he is referring to as strength. This is what he is referring to as strength. Okay, that is whether strength is there to achieve that or not. Okay, so this is what Plato says. I'm just including this. If you remember it while you are writing your answer, when you're writing your mains examination, you can include this as a part of your answer. Even if you do not include this as a part of your answer, in any means, it does not dilute what you are writing. Okay, it does not dilute what you are writing. Okay, now, so this is the introduction. ठीक है, अब इसे आप लिख सकते हो. You can write about how faith gives purpose, but faith is nothing until and unless you have the strength, the courage to pursue what you believe in, what purpose you consider to be important, what you hope for. है ना? It is something which you will write as the you will write it as the introduction itself. ठीक है? And of course, yes, strength here is both physical as well as mental strength. Okay, remember, or when we say physical or moral strength. Okay, so don't consider that it is only about your physical strength. Strength can be anything, and by looking at some examples, you will understand it. Okay, next, let's come to the body part of this answer. So, how do you write the body part here? How do you write the body part of this answer? So the body part of this answer is where I have to substantiate. I have explained what it means in the introduction, but I have to substantiate this in the body part of my answer. How do I do that? In this question, I can substantiate it by giving examples of different dimensions. Like, if suppose I am talking about the social dimension. Suppose I am discussing the social dimension. Now, in this case, faith is about what? The belief or hope. Hope related to what? Social reforms. So as a individual who lives in a society, we will always hope for a better society. We will always have this faith that we one day will be a part of a society which is better than what it is today. है ना? Like if we talk about the Indian society, the Indian society seems to be patriarchal. So tomorrow we believe, we hope, we have the faith that with social reforms there would be equal opportunity for women as well. If in our society there is prevalence of factors like caste, religion, tomorrow we hope, we have faith that the society is going to be what? Society is going to be more egalitarian, that is more equal. Now, this is what social reforms are, but this is how do we achieve them? We achieve them with strength. We achieve them with strength. So just a belief that we should pursue, we should pursue the society is not enough, or having just the belief or the faith that we are going to have a good society is not enough. And what we are supposed to do is we are supposed to pursue how we achieve it. And that comes where? That comes from strength. Okay. So strength, that means we have to show the courage to achieve such reforms. We have to achieve such reforms. You must have heard about a phrase, be the change that you want others to bring. है ना? Be the change. Be the change that you want to achieve. So if you want to achieve some social reforms, or whether you have to whether you have to look at suppose no the society being more egalitarian or something like that, what you are supposed to do is you are supposed to be that change. And how does that come from? That will come only from strength. Okay, here you can give an example of social reformers such as Raja Ram Mohan Roy, or for that matter such social reformers who showed the strength to talk about reforms that they believed, had the faith is correct, is right. Okay. Now, here you can also include examples of what you can use some examples from administration as well. You can use some examples from administration as well. You have to provide the administrative perspective here. And what is the administrative perspective that you have to provide here? So administrative perspective meaning, suppose we are talking about civil servants. Civil servants having faith, but simple faith is not enough. Why did I say that? See, civil servants have faith in the constitution. In the constitution. That is, civil servants generally believe that constitution is a good document, and civil servants believe that, have faith that the provisions, the values that the constitution provides should be upheld. But a simple faith or belief in such values is not enough. And what we need to do is we need to implement them. And implementation of such values, implementation of values, implementation of such values require strength. It does what? Implementation of such values requires strength, because if you believe in the values of democracy, accountability, transparency, you are supposed to follow that. है ना? You are supposed to uphold those values. If you believe in the value of justice, equality, you are supposed to uphold that. And upholding such values is not easy within an administrative structure, which means that if you are supposed to uphold the value of accountability, you will have to be accountable to the people. If you want transparency, you will have to follow the principle of openness. And this is going to result into you being accountable to the people. People are going to ask questions, they are going to question your decisions, and you will have to be accountable to it. And that is when, no, that's what strength, what kind of strength is required, है ना? तो सिर्फ faith of constitution, faith in constitution is not enough. You need to have the strength to uphold the provisions, the values provided for in the constitution. Okay? And then comes, another dimension of it could be historical dimension. And historical dimension could include what? Historical dimension could include you giving examples, such as you can talk about, you can talk about Gandhian example, or Mahatma Gandhi having the faith. And faith in what? Faith in the values of, faith in the values of, faith in the values of non-violence, and also the strength to follow it, strength to follow it. Why? By, no, you can write about the aftermath of the Chori Chora incident. The Chori Chora incident. In fact, if we talk about the statement coming from Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, there will be no example of the strength that Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel has shown in order to achieve what he believed was correct. So Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel had faith in what? The belief of a united India. And he showed the strength to unite more than 500 odd princely states. So even Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel is an example of this. Even Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel is an example. You can use it as an example. ठीक है? देखो, different dimensions covered with the same idea through examples. How this is important socially speaking? How is it important historically speaking? How it is important administratively speaking? You can use examples of Dr. Manmohan Singh and PV Narasimha Rao believing, having the faith that an independent, the Indian economy need to be liberalized, and having the strength to bring about those reforms. The economic dimension of it, you can add the economic dimension of it as well. है ना? So depending upon how well you understand the question, you will be able to frame a good body. And then comes the conclusion part. So how would you approach the conclusion part? The conclusion part could be a problem where you highlight the problem with this. Why? Because if you look at the problems, there can be some problems. What could be the problems? The problems could be that if suppose there is an individual who blindly believes in some things without necessarily जजिंग देम रैशनली, है ना? अगर कोई इंडिविजुअल बिलीव करता है, यानी इट द इंडिविजुअल हैज faith on irrational, if the individual has faith on some irrational aspects, what will happen? This would result into, maybe if it results into strength, if the individual has the strength, the individual will do what? The individual is very likely to provide some, or no, to perform certain actions which could be detrimental to the society. It is not going to in any way have some positive impact on the society. It is going to be detrimental to the society. Okay, you can write this to balance your answer and accordingly end this answer by writing this kind of a conclusion. Yes. Is this understood? Is this understood? Yes. Jyoti Bhai Phule, yes. You can write examples of all social reformers. है ना? You can write examples of all social reformers. Even when you can emphasize on the idea that B.R. Ambedkar was someone who had the faith of what? B.R. Ambedkar was someone who had the faith that education among the deprived, the disadvantaged section is their key to do what? Is their key to overcome the social disabilities that they may face. है ना? He believed in that. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar believed that education is the key. And he himself showed that strength to imbibe that. He followed his education despite the fact that there were a lot of social problems that he faced. He showed the strength to follow it and thereby achieved what he aspired to. You will write this. You can write this as an example. Not one. There are so many other examples that you can add here. Okay. Moving on. Let's look at another question. देखो, try क्या समझना है? इस पूरे एक्सरसाइज का इंपॉर्टेंस क्या है? इस पूरे एक्सरसाइज का इंपॉर्टेंस ये है कि आप उस समय वो सोच सको जो आप या हम इस पर्टिकुलर सेशन में सोच पा रहे हैं. जब आप एक आंसर को जब एक आप स्टेटमेंट को पढ़ रहे हो, यू आर एक्चुअली रीडिंग कोट. So there are so many things that will come to mind, and most of the times you will find difficulty how to approach it. How do I start? A very simple way and a very good way to start is when you explain what the quote means. When you explain what the quote means. Like if you remember, just go back to the videos that we have discussed earlier, the sessions. If you have not seen those sessions, it is very important, it is paramount that you go through all those sessions. And in those sessions, what will you find? What will you find in those sessions? In those sessions, you will find the structure that we had discussed to answer such quotation based questions. I said meaning. Secondly, I talked about talked about contemporary relevance. I talked about looking at different dimensions. I talked about examples. And you can see everything that I said is what I have done. Introduction was about meaning. This statement was given by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, but could be seen as something which is important having contemporary relevance. So I emphasized on that. We talked about the no we talked about different dimensions, we looked at certain examples, and then we concluded the answer. So what we are discussing here is something that you should be able to do that by no while you are writing that 10 marker, maybe in 5 to 6 minutes. That is what you are supposed to learn here. That is what you're supposed, and all these sessions that I am taking and I will be taking is with this very idea that you are supposed to you develop that skill to write answers. ऐसा नहीं है कि आप समझते नहीं हो, but how you are supposed to write them becomes very important. Clear? Anyways, let us come to another quote, a quote which has been given by a very important scholar, Immanuel Kant, and his quote was used by UPSC 2024. They asked that. What was the quote? In law, a man is guilty when he violates the rights of others. Rights of others. In ethics, he is guilty if he only thinks of doing so. Okay, so this is a statement. Immanuel Kant, another very important individual. He is in fact he's the individual who has laid the foundation of a very important school of ethics called the deontology school. It is what? It is the deontology school that he has laid the foundations for, and it is his quote. Okay. Sir, there are so many quotes. How do we learn all of them? You are not supposed to learn those quotes. Palak, you are not supposed to learn these quotes. Okay. These quotes are where you are supposed to interpret them correctly and write it by relating it to the different dimensions, more importantly the contemporary dimensions. You are not supposed to learn these quotes, है ना? वहां पर आपसे quote नहीं पूछा जाएगा. You will be asked to elaborate or to explain the idea. Now, what does this particular quote tell us? Let's look at how do we approach the introduction to this particular quote here. Our introduction to this quote would be about what? Our introduction to this quote would be about a comparison with respect to law and with respect to ethics. A brief comment on it. What is it? Where we talk about law, what does law do? Law prescribes punishment only when an individual has violated that with actions that he has performed. Okay, so what does law do? Law prescribes punishment only when there has been a violation, or there has been an act performed, an act performed which is in its violation. Whereas when we talk about ethics, ethics is something which even goes beyond that. And what does ethics, according to this statement, is ethics emphasizes on the idea that if you even think of acting unethically, that is what is punishable under the ethical standards. Okay, so ethics is what? Ethics is, no, it prescribes, it punishes an individual for even for even thinking of performing an unethical act. An unethical act. Even when an individual thinks of performing an unethical act, that is punishable in ethics. How? Because when an individual violates moral standards, there is an inherent punishment there, which is what? It is self-inflicted. This is what? This is self-inflicted. That means there is no external dimension to it. No external dimension required. This is self-inflicted. जैसे ही मैंने कोई गलत चीज सोच भी लिया, even if I think about it, there is a sense of guilt. There may be a sense of remorse. There is a sense of disequilibrium that comes just because I have even thought of something which I believe is unethical. If I believe that that is unethical, even when I have thought of it, that is potentially going to do what? That is potentially going to bring about guilt, remorse, and therefore it is punishable. It is not externally, but it is internally punishable. Okay, this is what you write in the introduction part. Now, coming to the body part of the answer. So, what do I do? In the body part, I take up a comparison between law and ethics. I compare the two ideas. What is the meaning? Now, what is law and how law regulates behavior? What is ethics and how ethics regulates behavior? Okay, so some points could be what? Law is what? Law is an external parameter. It is an external parameter which measures or regulates our behavior, whereas ethics is a internal. It's a internal factor or internal parameter. It's an internal factor or it is an internal parameter which regulates our behavior. Which regulates our behavior. You will write that laws are enforced by the state. Laws are enforced by the state, meaning it is enforced externally. It is enforced externally, but ethics not necessarily is externally enforced. Ethics is something which is internal. That means enforced how? Enforced through our values, through our values or conscience, through our values or through our conscience. Okay. When it comes to punishment, what is punishment? If the if there is a violation of law, punishment is as prescribed by the law. But when it comes to ethics, ethics is more of an no, there is an internal judgment. So punishment also comes what? It is also internal. In the form of what? In the form of guilt or remorse. Okay, guilt or remorse. You can mention how laws are objective. These are objective. But when it comes to ethics, ethics could be subjective. Ethics, no, ethical standards could be what? Ethical standards could be very, very subjective. Okay, it could be very, very subjective. Clear? So you write about this. You can use this, and you can in fact include some examples as well in the answer here itself, and then you can write a paragraph emphasizing on the need for both. Okay, that means if we are talking about civil servants, so if we are talking about civil servants, what ensures that a civil servant acts no, ethically, and the civil servants upholds public interest? More appropriately, we can say, what ensures that civil servants, what ensures that civil servants uphold public interest? And here you will write about the complementary nature of law and ethics. Because if there is an absence of law, because ethics is not something which can be enforced objectively, so there is a possibility that civil servants indulge in actions which are unethical. Why? Because it is not something which is no, because there is absence of law. Okay, तो ये चीज ध्यान रहे. You will write about the complementary nature of it. And how do you write that? So you will write about the importance of law. How do you present that? You present that by writing that because laws are enforceable, it is, these are enforceable standards. So what does it do? To impose ethics. What does it do? It imposes ethics. It imposes ethics. What is the problem with ethics? The problem with ethics is it is not enforceable. If it is not enforceable, what is the possibility? The possibility is that there may be compromise on ethical standards. Compromise on ethical standards. Okay, you will write about importance of ethics. Why? Because ethics, moral maximum, ethics enforces moral maximum, whereas laws only enforce moral minimum. What does it do? It imposes moral only, it imposes only the moral minimum. So you will present the complementary nature by highlighting the importance of both laws and ethics, and this is basically how you do that. Okay? And finally, you can in fact end your answer by even drawing a diagram, diagram where you do what? Where you talk about the correlation between laws and ethics, that how laws overlap with ethics, though they are not identical, because sometimes laws can be unethical as well, but so they are not identical, but what they do is there is an overlap that is there. Laws sometimes determine what is ethics, or ethics is determined by law. So there is a complementary relationship. This is something that you present and accordingly end your answer. ठीक है? देखो, a 10 marker, you have to write 150 words. No, maximum you can do what? Maximum you can write 175 words. If you try and go beyond that, then there is a problem. ठीक है? So this is the way you approach this kind of a question. देखो, आपको समझो कि मैं क्या करने की कोशिश कर रहा हूं. मीनिंग, आई एम फॉलोइंग अ स्ट्रक्चर. आई एम जस्ट डूइंग व्हाट? आई एम जस्ट following a structure. I start the introduction by writing the meaning, after which I go to the next aspect, the body part, where I start explaining the correlation between the two terms. I start emphasizing on what? I start emphasizing on the complementary, or for that matter, if there is a contradictory relationship between anything that has been asked, I emphasize on it. I relate it to the contemporary times. I relate it to civil services, and then I end the answer by writing a conclusion on it. यही structure मैं follow करता हूं, and I sincerely believe that if you follow this structure, keeping these things in mind, you will be always in a better position to do what? You will always be in a better position to address your quotation based answers correctly. ठीक है? There is one more question. I do not. Sir, we write down all the answers, जो. Of course, you will have to write all the answers. देखो, आंसर राइटिंग इज अबाउट प्रैक्टिस. अगर आपने आंसर राइटिंग को प्रैक्टिस नहीं किया है, यू विल नॉट बी एबल टू राइट इट देयर. ये चीज ध्यान रहे. जितने भी आप मेरी सेशंस को देख लो, ठीक है, जितने भी आप मेरी सेशंस को देख लो, इससे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा until and unless you are able to do what? You are able to write it, practice it. ठीक है? Anyways, let's come to one more question. 2024, there was one more statement which was asked. The statement was of Swami Vivekanand. Learn everything that is good. Learn everything that is good from others. Learn everything that is good from others, but bring it in. But bring it in, and in your own way, absorb it. In your own way, absorb it. Do not become others. do not become others. ठीक है? Do not become others. This is basically what the statement is. Learn everything that is good from others, but bring it in and in your own way absorb it. Do not become others. Now this is a question which basically, if you look at what the question says, what the meaning of this particular statement is, what is Swami Vivekanand in this statement trying to tell us? So he is emphasizing on learning, not imitation. What is he emphasizing on? He is emphasizing on learning, the importance of learning and not the importance of imitation. इस बात को आपको इंट्रोडक्शन में लिखना है, ठीक है? बिकॉज आई डू नॉट हैव द टाइम टू गेट इनटू द डिटेल्स ऑफ हाउ आई डिस्कस द लास्ट टू क्वेश्चंस. तो इसे आप घर पे कोशिश करोगे. मैं आपको एक ब्रीफ स्ट्रक्चर बता दे रहा हूं. इंपॉर्टेंस ऑफ लर्निंग, importance of learning and not importance of learning and not imitation. This is basically what has been mentioned. ठीक है? Now, what would you write in the body part of your answer? In the body part of your answer, you would write how learning is what results into development for humanity. Okay? Importance of learning. Importance of learning for development. For development of importance of learning for development of humanity, है ना? How is learning important for humanity? Because until and unless we learn, we do not grow. So that correlation is what you will emphasize on. Then you will also emphasize on what is the problem with imitation. Problem with imitation. Imitation meaning you cannot become someone. You have your own individualism. Now, every society has its own individualism. Every individual is different. So, we cannot just imitate the practices that are maybe administratively speaking, the practices that are going on somewhere else. We cannot do what? We cannot simply we cannot simply copy those practices. We need to what? We need to understand what are the aspects of those practices which are important and accordingly adapt to it by learning from it, है ना? Not imitating or copying it. That is what you will write. What are the problems related to it? This is this is what you will write in the in the second part of it. देखो, क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग जरूरी होता है ना? आप कोई कुछ कर रहा है, आप भी वो चीज कर लोगे. कोई कुछ बोल रहा है, आप भी वो चीज बोल लोगे. ये नहीं पॉसिबल है. दिस इज नॉट समथिंग दैट इज गोइंग टू हैव अ पॉजिटिव इम्पैक्ट. सो व्हाट यू नीड टू डू इज you need to accordingly you need to emphasize on the importance of critical thinking, on the importance of cultural sensitivity, on the importance of individualism. इन चीजों को आप प्रॉब्लम्स में लिख सकते हो कि what are the problems related to imitation. ठीक है? Civil servants, from civil servants point of view, you can give an example of how it is important for civil servants to learn from global practices and adopt those practices in India, but by taking into consideration what is relevant to our society, to our administration. So we can learn, but we cannot imitate, or we cannot simply copy that. ठीक है? This is basically what you will write here in the body part. In the conclusion part, you will emphasize on the importance of discriminating between the two. You will emphasize how you cannot simply indiscriminately, if you start copying something, how can it be counterproductive? How, how there is a possibility that there can be specifically when we talk about policies. So whatever is going on in, suppose, America, we cannot copy them. So you can write that as the conclusion part. Okay, तो ये ऐसे आप इस पर्टिकुलर एस्पेक्ट को इस पर्टिकुलर आंसर को डील कर सकते हो. देखो, I have dealt with 3 questions that were asked in 2024. The third question, I just gave you a structure, not discussed in details, because we had a time of 1 hour. And what you are supposed to do is you are supposed to write it. बार बार अगर इन सेशंस को देखते हो तो आपको एक बेसिक बातें समझ में आएगी जो मैं कहने की कोशिश कर रहा हूं कि किस तरीके से आपको अप्रोच करना है व्हेन इट कम्स टू दोज कोटेशन बेस्ड क्वेश्चंस. ठीक है, this is it for this session. When we meet in the next session, now quotation based questions I'm not going to discuss. Next session would be no, next week, most probably by Tuesday or by Thursday. Sorry, Tuesday or Wednesday, I will be taking that session. In that very session, we will start our discussion with applied ethics or questions जो applied ethics आते हैं, how to address that particular question. Okay. Yes. So thank you everyone for being here. Please practice. Practice will do you a world of good. Please practice. Thank you.